From BBC Learning English, this is Learning English from the News, our podcast about the news headlines.
In this programme, FIFA Men's World Cup, excitement and concern.
Hello, I'm Pippa.
And I'm Georgie.
In this programme, we look at one big news story and the vocabulary in the headlines that will help you understand it.
You can find all the vocabulary and headlines from this episode, as well as a worksheet on our website, bbclearningenglish.com.
So, let's hear more about this story.
The FIFA Men's World Cup begins tomorrow, and this year it's bigger than ever. It could also be one of the most controversial ever.
It's the first to be hosted by 3 nations, Canada, Mexico and the United States, with a record number of teams and matches. 48 teams are taking part and there'll be over 104 matches.
Many are excited to see world-class players like Messi, Mbappe and Ronaldo on the pitch.
However, there are concerns surrounding the cost of tickets, the impact of international politics and immigration policies, security, extreme heat and sustainability.
Let's have our first headline. This one is from El País, a Spanish newspaper. North America put to the test. Countdown to an almost ready World Cup.
That headline again from El País. North America put to the test. Countdown to an almost ready World Cup.
This headline mentions a countdown to the World Cup. Now, a countdown is when you are literally counting down the time until the beginning of something. This is a countdown, for example, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. But we are looking at the expression put to the test.
Yes, if you put something or someone to the test, it means you check if they can succeed in a challenging situation. The key word here is test. So imagine you're testing something to see whether it can do what it's supposed to.
Yes, now in the case of the World Cup, North America is being put to the test. The rest of the world will see if they are ready to host the huge event with all the transport and security challenges. Remember, there are 3 host countries, so a lot of travelling is involved. And 48 teams means there are a lot of players and fans coming from around the world.
In the headline, put to the test is used in the passive form. North America is put to the test. Let's hear an example in the active form, Georgie.
Yes, well, I've been wearing my new waterproof jacket a lot lately because it keeps me warm. But I'm waiting for a rainy day so I can really put it to the test. I want to see if it really is waterproof.
We've had put something to the test. Check to see whether something can succeed in a challenging situation.
For example, the screaming children put their teacher's patience to the test.
This is Learning English from the News, our podcast about the news headlines. Today we're talking about controversies surrounding this year's FIFA World Cup.
Simply the greatest event that humanity, that mankind, has ever seen. Those are the words of FIFA President Gianni Infantino, who has portrayed this year's Men's World Cup as the most inclusive, welcoming and unifying to date.
But there are concerns about the relations of host country US with other countries. Never before, for instance, has a host country been at war with a participating nation.
Yes, since February, Iran and the US have been at war, but Iran is due to compete in this year's World Cup.
Iran's players and support staff have been told they have to fly in and out of the US on match days. Iran has also accused the US of denying visas to some executives and staff.
Let's have our next headline. This one is from NBC, which is a US news organisation. FIFA World Cup 2026, the geopolitical tensions at play off the pitch.
That headline again from NBC. FIFA World Cup 2026, the geopolitical tensions at play off the pitch.
This headline is about what's happening off the pitch at the World Cup. Off the pitch means the things happening outside of the game of football. Let's look at this phrase, at play.
Yes, in a basic sense, at play means involved or influencing the current situation. So when the headline says the geopolitical tensions at play off the pitch, the headline writer means that besides the game of football, there are other things which may influence events at the World Cup.
At play is quite common in a news context. It's often used when a situation is complex or when there are several factors to consider. So another example, when it comes to the party's election loss, there were many factors at play.
At play can also be used in more everyday contexts. For example, the couple said their argument was about financial difficulties, but I think there were other things at play.
We've had at play, involved or influencing the current situation.
For example, people blame children's poor mental health on social media, but there are other factors at play.
This is Learning English from the News from BBC Learning English. We're talking about the FIFA World Cup.
So, we've discussed some international political tensions surrounding Iran's participation in the World Cup. What else is going on, Georgie?
Well, there are concerns about the effects US President Donald Trump's immigration policies will have on World Cup attendance.
Analysis of travel data by the BBC shows that fans from more than a quarter of the 48 countries taking part in the World Cup are facing travel bans, tighter restrictions, or high visa rejection rates.
For fans who are able to get into the country, tickets for this World Cup have been the most expensive ever, and the ticket system has been criticised for being complicated and difficult to understand.
This week, Omar Artan, who was going to be the first Somali to referee at the World Cup finals, was denied entry to the United States and can no longer take part.
Let's have our next headline. This one is from the BBC. Why supersized and politicised World Cup comes at a cost.
That headline again from the BBC. Why supersized and politicised World Cup comes at a cost.
This time, let's look at this expression, come at a cost. Now, cost is often about money, isn't it?
Sometimes, but not in this case. If something comes at a cost, it means that doing it may get you something good, but it also brings negative consequence. It has the sense that it requires some kind of sacrifice.
Here in the headline, the World Cup this year is supersized and politicised, but this comes at a cost. In other words, this comes with negative consequences.
For example, because there are 3 host nations this year, there is an environmental cost because teams and fans have to fly between countries to attend matches. President Trump's immigration policies also have a cost because it means many fans are unable to get visas to see their teams play.
Let's have a more everyday example. Moving to the countryside from the city comes at a cost. There's less public transport to move around.
We've had come at a cost. Doing something will bring negative consequence.
For example, she's done really well in her career, but it comes at a cost. She's barely had any time off.
That's it for this episode of Learning English from the News. We'll be back next week with another news story.
If you're interested in the topic of sport, we have lots more programmes on our website. Follow the notes for this programme or go to bbclearningenglish.com.
Bye for now.
Goodbye.